Welcome into UGA Football Live with JC Shelton, where the dogs come to talk. All right, everybody, welcome in UGA Football Live with JC Shelton. Here, a little Orange Bowl preview with my partner this season, and I'm proud to announce new co-host of UGA Football Live, Arthur Lynch, former Georgia tight end. He's going to be joining us as much as he can moving forward. And we'll definitely have some more episodes coming out this offseason and such, as we do every year. You know the drill. But Artie, how are you doing, man? How was your Christmas?
I mean, I'm playing hurt right now, as you know, JC. Caught the COVID. This is the fourth time I've had it since I guess the pandemic began. Yeah, I'm doing okay, but excited to talk to some dogs. I think a lot of news has broke or broken, I guess, since the last time we talked. And unfortunately, I think that's negative news for Florida State. I don't know if you just saw that Coleman did during the NFL draft as well, but we'll dive into it. I think excited to be here. Christmas was strong. Glad I was able to rest up even when I got sick, and yeah, excited to talk some dogs.
I like it, guys. He's playing hurt. He's playing hurt, but there's a difference between hurt and injured, and he's still here and he's working strong. So
Amen.
appreciate you, Artie. But yeah, so Keon Coleman's one of those guys. We knew he had already opted out of the game, but he officially entered the NFL draft. Um, this game is really interesting for a lot of reasons, and mainly being those opt-outs in the transfer portal and what have you. We talked a lot about that this week, but a lot has broken since our last conversation. We want to get into that stuff today. Number 6 Georgia, number 5 Florida State, 4 p.m. Saturday, Miami's Hard Rock Stadium. Last time Georgia visited there for an Orange Bowl, it was a good day. It was a good day for the Bulldogs. That huge win over Michigan, just absolute drubbing by the Bulldogs, and went on to win a national title, of course. And they're back here. And I know the players love playing in there. I mean, it's Miami, a lot of stuff to do, good energy there, and really a great stadium to watch a football game as well. So if you're making the trip, definitely enjoy that. But we'll start with the obvious here. Who's playing, who's not? And, Artie, this bowl season. I went on a college football show last week, and we talked about, gave our betting cards for the weekend. And it's just so hard to really assess these games because of this situation, right? And it felt like it gets harder every year because you get more like this. Georgia, although they do have the 20 transfers, right? They do have fewer opt-outs than Florida State by a lot. There's not any official right now, which is interesting. I mean, Georgia had 6 opt-outs versus Cincinnati in the Peach Bowl. We talked about that 2020. We expected some. There may be some here in a couple of days. You could be listening to this, watching this, what have you, before kickoff, and there'll be some new updates. I think what you want to focus on who's playing for Georgia, and that's Carson Beck, Kendall Milton, Kamari Lassiter, Javon Bullard, Chaz Chambliss. They've all said they're going to play. The other guys, a lot of other guys we expect to. But I think there's, when you talk about this and the opt-ins and opt-outs for Georgia, it's about maybe silent opt-outs where they're not going to announce and they dress out, but they don't happen to play. I think we'll see that, Artie. What standpoint do you have on this? It feels like a culture for Athens and Kirby Smart, what he's built, and the players want to be here for their team and play and represent UGA. Georgia has a chance to become the winningest class. This class does in UGA history, one of the win over the Seminoles. What's your standpoint on opting in, opting out as a former player and a guy who's been through it?
Yeah, I think I think players should always try to do what's best for them and their futures, right? But I think they should be very honest when they look in the mirror about what is best for their future, right? So, I think if in today's day and age, right, we had a Matt Stafford, like Matt Stafford was at UGA, and I wouldn't, knowing he was going to be like the surefire #1 overall pick, I wouldn't blame him for not competing in the Orange Bowl, right? Back in the day when he played, he ended up playing in the Capital One Bowl against Michigan State. Georgia won, so on and so forth, right? But I think my take on it, and I've been listening is probably the one I've been reading, I should say, the quotes that Todd Hartley's saying about Brock Bowers, or that Kirby's saying about guys that have answering the questions about potential opt-outs. And I think Kirby which is a testament to what he has built from a culture perspective at UGA, has kind of have like he's allowed to have this kind of like Bill Belichick esque response, like we're hoping that everyone's gonna play. Right now, we believe everyone's going to play. If they're not here right now, it's because they're nursing an injury or so on and so forth. And I think the players and Kirby are aligned with saying like, okay, if you're not going to play, we totally understand that. But in order so we don't give a competitive advantage, we want you here. We're not going to make you play, and so on and so forth. So I do think there's that kind of like, don't give the enemy any sort of edge to it. But I also think there is, and we've talked about it a little bit last time, as I do think that Kirby has recruited a certain type of player that is eager to play and thinks that if there is a way to maybe bolster my draft stock, I should say, I'm going to take it. Right, I'm going to err on the side not of caution but of risk for myself. That if like, okay, well, if I don't play, I'm a bottom third round pick. But if I do play and I ball out, I could be a second or first, right? I think guys are more inclined at Georgia to play and bolster their draft stock as opposed to some other guys at some other schools that have different culture. Will just be like, well, I'm a surefire draft pick. I'm going to IMG or I'm going to LA or name your training facility across the country to go start my NFL career. So I think that's kind of the difference, or at least how I see it, right? Obviously, try to get the Patriots shout out there for my boys back home, but I think that's kind of how I view it. I think Kirby sees it as a competitive advantage to not divulge too much information, but I also think that there is a competitive spirit within the players that he recruits, where guys want to get better and want to try to compete.
Yeah, and there's an opportunity for a lot of guys, younger guys, to really bolster their career and their jump start their time at Georgia when they didn't have a season. Maybe they redshirted and didn't play a few snaps. They had guys ahead of them, and we'll get to see that on Saturday. As far as Brock Bowers, you mentioned there for a second there, and Amarius Mims, they did not travel with the team to Miami. Now, they are expected to join the team later in the week, and this really centers around their ankle injuries, rather. Brock obviously had the tightrope surgery, so did Amarius Mims. Brock came back 26 days. After that, Amarius didn't. And he still played, obviously hobbled that latter half of the season, very hobbled against Alabama. And Kirby Smart said something interesting to me, and I think really shows us who's going to play and who's not. For the ones we don't know, we haven't announced. The guys I mentioned earlier have already announced that. Um, he said those who are healthy, we expect to play, right? And there's a bunch of guys who aren't, so I expect them really not to. Maybe dress out. I expect them to dress out. They're going to travel, of course. I think they will, but they won't get in the game. I think that's the case here for Brock and Amarius, at least, and other guys as well. And some of those guys beyond Brock and Mims there, Ra Thomas, Julian Humphrey, Tate Ratledge, Lat McConkey, Smile Mondon, Warren Brinson, all those guys were banged up for most of the year. And I don't see them playing in this game. And I think that's okay for Georgia when you consider Florida State and you know what they're bringing to the table, which isn't much. They're a shell of that team that went 13-0 and ACC champions, whether or not should be in the CFP. We've already spoken about, but they limp into this game overall, right? And we'll focus on just 24 players who we know aren't going to play, and that's including 15 transfers and 9 opt-outs so far. And there's been 2 in the last 24 hours for Florida State. So we could see some more. Again, by the time you're watching, listening to this, there could be more. But from what we know right now, we'll start with this here as far as opting out. So quarterback Tate Rodemaker there opted out earlier this week. Interesting timing for him. I think there was a painting on the door there by that Florida State staff that, hey, you're not going to be the guy moving forward. So he said, all right, I'm going to take this opportunity to hit the portal. January 2nd is that cutoff date. He only has so many days, right, to figure out where he wants to go, or he has to wait until April. So he took that advantage, which means true freshman Brock Glenn is going to be starting for them. Started against Louisville when Tate was out with a concussion, threw for 55 yards. That Florida State defense did all the work, really. Florida State just did enough on offense to beat Louisville. But he's going to be starting against a Georgia defense that's going to have most of their secondary A little light on the outside linebacker room and inside linebacker room, but still really good players there for Georgia and most of their contributors. And it's going to be really tough sledding for him. And including on that offense, it's really just taking a hit for Florida State. You got Keon Coleman, who we already mentioned. He is that matchup winner. I mean, he's whoever you put him on, he's going to match up well against. And he's not there. That's a big loss for them. Another wide receiver in Johnny Wilson, running back Trey Benson. Those are starters. Edge Jared Verse, maybe the best player on that defense this year. He's going to be a good NFL pick. Tight end Jaheim Bell, another matchup problem they don't have. Defensive line wise, you got Fabian Lovett, and then two defensive backs who are really good contributors for them are going to be NFL picks as well. Redardo Green and Jarian Jones also opted out. So that's, two wide receivers. As far as the depth chart, they've already released, Florida State's already released this depth chart. And the interesting notes I pulled away from that, you have two receivers on the depth chart at running back. And of the six wide receivers listed on the depth chart, three are true freshmen.
Yeah.
Okay. So, the QB depth chart there, you have third stringer, and we've already talked about, and Brock Glenn, and then you have two walk-ons as a backup. So God forbid something happens to him, and then you're really, really reaching for the Seminoles there at quarterback, and that's going to be tough, tough sledding. So, what? How do you think this impacts Florida State? Is just what they can do, Artie. To me, schematically, there's not much, right?
Yeah, I mean, you think about how this team was constructed, and it wasn't quite the Dion, let's like plug and play as many guys we possibly can year one. I mean, obviously Norvell has been there for a couple of years. And I think he took a bunch of transfers in the portal early on and developed those transfers, right? But I think this year specifically, like they were this was probably like that fourth year build where they're like, we expect to be very good because we have a lot of upperclassmen and we have a lot of like underclassmen, but who will be draft eligible that will probably be their last year here, right? Um, I think Jordan Travis, if I remember correctly, was a fifth year guy and a transfer. Maybe not a transfer, but definitely a fifth year guy. Um, and unless I'm mistaken, but I think ultimately, this they were susceptible to this in a perfect scenario, right? If they played in a game like, and again, I don't think it's meaningless, right? I think there's a lot to play for, but there's not a national championship to play for. I think they put themselves in a position where a lot of people might leave, right? And unfortunately, based on the conversations that you and I had last week, talking about like the timing of the portal being open, if you tell a quarterback, particularly a quarterback, like, hey, we're going to move on from you, like, you're probably not going to start here. We already got a quarterback that's probably going to come here and announce here after the fact. Um, you need to go. And for them, based off the fact that they haven't had Jordan Travis for a couple of weeks now, A, and then B, they already were kind of bleeding on the offensive side of the ball. Um, I think it's going to be very, very hard for them to play a team like Georgia, who will not take this game lightly because they've done that before in the past in that Sugar Bowl that we mentioned, talking about when we played University of Texas a couple of years ago. And my guess is our defense is going to swarm and suffocate this offense. Can't speak for how our offense is going to do, right? I mean, I think their defense has depth. So even where they lost players, they'll be able to plug and play a little bit. But this is like an anemic offense they're walking in the Orange Bowl with. And, you know, maybe this quarterback will have a month under his belt and a little bit of game experience to kind of turn the corner a little bit. But God forbid he gets injured, right? I think it's one of those things that's very tough. The transfer portal, you can add depth, but you can also lose all of your depth overnight. And I think Florida State, at least offensively, right, is going to struggle to put forth a team that's going to be competitive in this game.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned that too as well, the quarterback position. And that's no offense to old Brock here, but he's a true freshman. He's a young kid. He doesn't have the body for the team that he's about to go up against as far as
Yeah.
taking hits, right? So, what can you do to keep him clean? And that is a lot of quick passes, screens, slants, run the ball the best you can. right? So I think the Florida State's going to have to do that if they don't want to put themselves in even a worse situation as far as depth there at quarterback as they have now. You wanted to say something there, already?
Yeah, I think in the thing, I remember we played a game against Auburn in 2011, and at home we beat them up pretty good. It was a close score game. It was the game Bakari Rambo had the pick six and the stadium went wild. And it was a tough first half. And the second half, we really just kind of like took their will, right? I mean, really stepped on their throats, basically ran too tight for the fullback, 22 personnel, and just shoved the ball down the throat. I think we maybe threw the ball like twice in the second half. But I say all of that to say this. Bobo was like, this was one of Aaron Murray's best games, even though Aaron probably had like, a pedestrian game throwing the ball. But Aaron was able to get to the line of scrimmage and check in and check out of the runs that we wanted to run, right? Because we were basically running either power two or lead away or zone two, zone away, right? And we would make those calls to the line of scrimmage based on what the defense gave us, right? And Aaron at this time was a third year sophomore. And I think was really coming into his own about understanding what the defense is giving them. When the safety shifts down, okay, easy now, check opposite, check opposite. We're like, hey, we're going to go zone instead of man power scheme to the front side, right? And you mentioned, right, the run game, right, and quick pass game, and being able to kind of adjust the line of scrimmage and taking what the defense gives you, and then adjusting with those audibles, right, and that can be done, but it's usually done by a veteran quarterback, right, and he's most likely going to struggle to just get the guys in the right formation if we're like, okay, we're running a zone two here, our defense knows it's coming, so we're going to load that side. We're going to have it like you don't want to be, you running power or whatever into the blitz, right? And I don't think he's going to be able to pick up the disguise coverages or disguise blitz and that, and maybe he will, but therein lies like just an example of where inexperience really hurts you at a very basic level, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to want to run the ball a lot and do this kind of quick game, not have to do like attack us downfield and complex coverages. It's like you need to be able to run the football, and I think that they will have a tough time doing that. Not because they can't do it physically, but because like it's the run game relies heavily on the quarterback just as much as it does the offensive line blocking the guys in front of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think what sets up for FSU, at least if you're a Seminoles fan, you can focus on that run game and kind of use it to your advantage. Now, you noted that, his inexperience, Brock Glenn's, and, checking in and out of runs and what Georgia gives you on defense. I think that it's a negative for him, but at least their offensive line seems to be the least affected by the
Right.
transfer portal and the opt out. So you at least have those guys who have been together and can push some guys around if they need to. And Georgia did get pushed around against Bama. So what can Georgia do there? I think Florida State might have an advantage here and there, breaking off some runs. You don't know. I think you have to pass to be able to do that, right? And then Georgia has that secondary that's mostly intact there with Javon Bullard and Starks he'll play, and of course Kamari right there at corner. I think that also allows Georgia to be able to do something schematically. If you think, okay, let's say those guys aren't playing, right? You have freshmen and younger, inexperienced guys coming in there and replacing you can't do as much schematically because maybe you don't trust those guys to be exactly where they need to be if you run a special blitz or a look that you're not used to running or giving them something else that they're not expecting. But I think Georgia has it here, so they can afford to show them some different looks and do some other things. Maybe in Kirby Smart said in the past, he trusts those players and their strengths to be able to blitz and give exotic pressures, and I think you get a lot of those from Javon and Malachi and even Kamari in this game, right? Because you trust those guys and they're good at doing it. They're all good tacklers. They've shown that they're keen in blitzing and being at the right spot at the same time when they're not. So I think Georgia has the advantage there. Now, as far as the depth at certain positions, Georgia is facing some issues there. You've got a lot of young dogs are going to play in this one in those positions, but you have wide receivers probably hit the hardest as far as depth. I mean, not your starters, but you have Jackson Meeks, Yazid Haynes, Delion, that's a hard one. Denala and Morissette. They're all in the portal in Mekhi Muse as well, and he's your punt returner. Now you do have a guy and he'd be able to take that role of an Anthony Evans. So we saw an SEC championship break a good one. So I think Georgia will be fine there. And then outside linebacker, you don't have Damon Wilson. He underwent knee surgery. You have Marvin Jones Jr. and C.J. Madden in the portal. And then cornerback, you have A.J. Harris and Nyland Green in the portal as well. Inside linebacker, Jamon Dumas Johnson, he's at Kentucky. Xavier Sorey is not going to be there as well. And then with Mondon status in question as far as his injury and not being able to go, you got CJ Allen and Raylan Wilson. They're going to get majority of the snaps there. Not many experienced players behind them. So those guys are going to be really, really relied upon. And we've seen them do good things. I'm not questioning their ability here. I think they're going to play a great game. And CJ Allen, especially, watch him as a blitzer. He's a man on fire when he gets that call to blitz. And then Gunnar Stockton at quarterback, right? He's going to back up Carson Beck. And I really expect Gunnar to have some plays in this game as well. I think Georgia gets him in,
Totally.
right? Get him ready. You need to start
Mhm.
preparing him now and as much as you possibly can because he's the presumed backup next year. Probably fight with Ryan Puglisi we talked about last week for
My
that spot.
guy,
Yeah.
Avon, Old Farms, Connecticut, baby. Powerhouse, New England. Let's go.
Yeah. So we'll get into our predictions, how we see this game going. I really like Georgia's run game in here. You've got your running backs. As far as we know, we haven't heard about Dejon specifically, but expected him to go. And then Kendall Milton. He's already said he's going to play. So there's your top two rushers for Georgia. Carson Beck, his ability there. I mean, even though the receiver depth may take a hit here, I'm not sure if Rod Thomas is going to play. Lad McConkey, not sure if he's going to play. I know he battled with injuries. And like I said earlier, aforementioned Kirby Smart says about the injuries and how that plays into who's going to play in this game. I think it's safe to say Lad McConkey doesn't play. Um, but I think just having Carson back there and the experience, his football IQ, and like you said, you mentioned it earlier, getting in and out of the plays you want to be in, going to the guys you know you need to go to for what a defense gives you. I think you have that in Carson. So I think the offense plays well in this game. Um, so I really like that to happen for Georgia. And on defensive, we already talked about having those guys in the secondary back and talented, young, albeit linebackers there, bodes well for Georgia. Defensive line, watch for that. See if FSU can get some movement up front. It'll be a little different game, I think. Maybe they'll stretch it out a little bit. But I think Georgia moves well on offense and just suffocates Brock Glenn. I think 35-10 for Georgia. Interesting, though, 19-point favorite for Georgia right now. It's shot up all the way to 19, and it's over unders 44 and a half. And I'm taking the over. I tell you that. If you're 19 points is a lot, but you consider everything for Florida State. I like 35-10. I like that over to hit. What say you, Artie?
You said 44 and a half?
44 and a half.
Dude, I don't know if Florida State's getting 10 points.
I gave them
I
the
think they
benefit of the
might get
doubt here.
I think they might get goose egged here. Uh, I think it's like 38-3. I'll take the under. Because I don't know,
38.
man. Dude, that their offense is decimated.
Yeah, I see your point. I do. It's just
Like
bowl game, man. I'm just not. I'm giving them benefit of the doubt here to have something
DC,
happen.
it is
Come on,
decimated.
back door, fourth quarter, late in the game. Backups upon backups in the game.
They already are on backups
I
upon
know
backups.
exactly. So you got even more backups, and I'm talking down the depth chart, baby. I'm talking
I
walk-ons.
mean, I don't know. We'll see. You said 44 and a half, so that means it would have to be minimum like 34 or 35-10 is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going 38-3.
No, I can see. I don't disagree with you. I
Yeah.
just I'm giving them some points. I'm giving them a few points. Not many. It's just 10. I don't think that's. I mean, come on. You saw some lesser offenses do something against Georgia this year. Maybe not to the extent Florida State's at, but you know how football is. You never know. A right field position here and there, maybe a mistake, maybe a blown
They had a
coverage, what
lesser
have you.
offense in the ACC championship game,
Yeah, yeah, you're
and
right.
then it got cut in half.
True. Never know, baby. I don't know.
I'm
Miami.
just
Miami.
who knows, but I think uh, I'm interested to see like and again this is probably a conversation for like an off season pod, but for a team like Florida State, right, that is in this that has lost so much. It's like, I mean, I know they've got recruits coming in, this and that, but I feel like that Florida State more than anyone else is like, I'll be interested to see what happens with them next year. Is what I'm saying, right? Like, because I think they were in a unique position where they hit everything at the right time, but they haven't recruited at such a high level like Georgia or Alabama has or LSU has, where it's like they've been slowly developing the guys that they've brought in, right? I think this was their peak. So, which is why I think we see so many guys, leaving. And I know this is not a Florida State pod, but I've been thinking a lot about this in particular because I think recruiting now more than ever is super important because you need to get guys on campus and develop them as quickly as possible because these massive waves of turnover on teams and rosters is going to be significant moving forward.
Yeah, they do have a really good recruiting class. I think they did a good job there, battling those Florida teams and a rising Miami. And then Florida, their class got decimated at the end, but I think they did a good job there. Transfer wise, they haven't gotten a lot. Marvin Jones Jr., I think, from Georgia is that loan incoming. The last time I checked. Now, with the date how it is and January 2nd, the cutoff, maybe they hit that hard after this game. Maybe they already have something in the works, and you could, like I said, by the time you watch or listen to this, it could be some changes there for them. They do have another window in the spring. I think they have the guys, and I like, Mike Norvell has done a good job, especially in the ACC championship without the quarterback, of course. And you go down to your third string, you still win or a Power Five championship. I know it's the ACC, and they're down at least this year for sure with Clemson and what have you, and how they ended up playing and the strength overall in that conference. But good things to come for them. I mean, I think this is a huge year for them. You have to get a guy like Jordan Travis to make that happen again, right? I think quarterback is the key for them. And like I said, the recruiting class has the talent, but you need some experience here, especially as you move into a 12-team playoff. You're playing more games next year if you get in. I think that's the key here. But yep, Georgia, Florida State right here, Orange Bowl, Miami, and a Hard Rock Stadium. Already 38-3.
Yeah, dude, you're nuts to think that they're scoring 10 points.
Hey, listen, my predictions were pretty good this year as far as score
I'm not
goes.
saying they're
We'll
not.
go with it.
I think you just got maybe like your fiance's dad or your fiance's dad went to Florida State or something. He'd be a nice coach.
No,
I was like,
I am being a little nice. I'm thinking. I think I don't know. I'm giving him a little bit of benefit, a little bit, right?
100%.
Just football happens, and I don't think George is going to come out of this game without mistakes. So maybe those lead to some points here for the
I
Seminoles.
agree. I also think that we're overlooking the fact that in what was it 2019 that Sugar Bowl I think haunts, and we've talked about this and ad nauseum at this point, but like Kirby, the word complacency I think irks him, right? Like it bothers him, and which is the sign that he is, there's multiple signs why he's elite, but I guess what you're saying is like the elite, the true competitors, like that complacency word, like it like sets them off, right?
Mm.
And they were complacent in that Texas game a couple years ago, right? I think it was Texas, right? Because we beat Baylor in the Sugar Bowl. It was Texas that we lost to.
Mm-hmm.
The Bulldog got scared of the cow or whatever, the Longhorn. Like it was the whole thing, right? And we missed because I think that was after the offsides call game against Alabama, right? Am my Georgia history as a history major here coming? Is it coming back together, right? In the SEC championship game where we lost to Alabama,
I want to say yes. I
right?
thought I was thinking Tyler Simmons on off sides was national championship.
It could have been, but we lost. We lost a tough one
Yeah.
to, and we didn't get to go to the playoff, and we ended up going to the Sugar Bowl,
Mm.
and we were a better team than that Texas team,
Okay.
and Texas was back, and they beat us up pretty good, right?
Yeah, I see what you're saying about complacency, and he's built that culture. I think that's the difference now, right? He was still getting his feet
Well, that's what
wet
I'm saying.
in his class, his guys in that building, right? It was his first senior class as well. And now look at now. You have these older guys who are like, yeah, I'm playing. Yeah, I'm going. Let's go.
Right, but what I'm saying is it's easy to see all these things in the news, like basically just like shit posting, part of my French here, Florida State. Like because the clickbait people like want to like kind of add into this Florida State victim story, blah blah. Oh my god, all these people are leaving because they got screwed, what have you. But it's very easy as a player, as a 19, 20-year-old kid to be like, we were going to beat these dudes anyway. Now we're definitely going to beat them, right? Like, let's go out in Miami the whole week, blase, blase. And I just think that Kirby's got this on lock, and the reason he's got it on lock is because of what happened against Texas a couple of years ago. And so he and his staff are on these guys like this, like that, like this, like that. Like, hey, no, we're gonna show the rest of the country why Florida State should not have been in the top four and why we should have been in the top four, right?
Yeah. And Warren
Um,
Brinson said that the smart from, I mean, the message from Smart and the staff has been don't let Alabama beat you twice. So that's what they're
yeah,
using,
totally.
right? And I get that. That makes sense. And I think you can't, I think a big part of this as well as we might be glossing over is the fact that you have so many former Georgia Bulldogs that wore that same uniform who are now coaching this team. And really
So many.
it gives you just that extra feeling of playing for the university, right? And going out the right way, even after winning. A lot of these guys have already won two national championships, lost maybe one game, right? Some of these guys, a few more, but I think that plays a part into it as well. And I think more teams, more programs should go out for former players, get them in. I mean, they bring that with them, and then if you're a good coach, it trickles down to your team. I think that's what you're seeing here for the Bulldogs. But
And to that point, before we go on, the UGA, unlike any other place in the SEC, minus probably Tennessee and Arkansas, right, and LSU, it's like you're playing for your entire state, right? Like you really truly represent the state. I mean, I know just Georgia Tech, but nobody like Georgia Tech has so many out of state. Like nobody really from the state goes to Georgia State, or the state does not identify with Georgia Tech like they do the red and black, right? So to your point, with the coaching staff having so many Georgia alums, I just think that it means too much, and Georgia will rise to the occasion to make sure that they don't have a letdown.
yeah, you're right, and we'll see how many points FSU scores. We'll have to see about
Yeah.
that one already. I'm waiting. They're gonna score 10. It's done. Um,
All right,
let's
coach. We'll see.
let's briefly talk about these other bowl games real quick. Focus on the CFP before we get off. I feel like that'd be
Mhm.
fun. Um, One I'll mention that's not CFP is Ohio State and Missouri. If you're not taking Missouri, I question your sanity here. Marvin Harrison Jr. ain't gonna play. Obviously, quarterback situation is up in the air there, and they have too much to replace. You look at Missouri; those guys are all playing. I think. Now I haven't looked at it in a minute, but I'm pretty sure none has opted out. This is huge for that Missouri program. They're going to come in there with the mindset
Huge.
that this is a championship kind of for them, right? To put their program in a whole different stratosphere, really. Playing your first, I think it's their first in the year six, and then you play a team like Ohio State and all the culture that they bring and the marquee program in college football, one of them. And you walk out with a win. And what does that say for your program moving forward for Eli Drinkwitz, for those players coming back next year, right? I think it's huge for them. And the last time I checked, I think they were a 1 point favorite. It might have changed a bit, but that's one I'm looking at too. I like Missouri for sure in that game. They might run for 250 yards. I don't know.
It really is an amazing job that Eli Dirkwitz has done there. Like it's I was thinking about that the other day when when I was just kind of looking at the matchups and I was just like, it's not a, it's I think it's an easy it's an easier school to get up and running when you're in the Big 12. It's very hard to get up and running like what they're doing right now or the season they just had in the SEC because it's just not a conventional powerhouse, and I think they could be pretty good next year too.
Definitely. And this line, that's crazy, man. We just mentioned that the line was definitely Missouri by a point, and now it's moved to Ohio State 3 point favorite. So that's interesting. I don't know what's going on there,
Oh,
but
Vegas knows something. That's what they're
yeah,
saying.
but it might even be more of an opportunity for your betters out there. Um,
Oh yeah.
Ole Miss, Penn State. That'll be a good one. Uh, Take Ole Miss there. Penn State doesn't play offenses.
No,
Um,
I like Ole Miss.
and then really it's just CFP, right? And I think it's shaping up for Alabama, Texas matchup. That's what ESPN wants. That's for sure. And
Uh-huh.
the committee wants that matchup to back up what they've done, basically, right? The two best that they happen to put in after putting in the two most deserving. You got to do one or the other. We've talked about that a lot. But Alabama all day. Michigan's a point and a half favorite, which is interesting. Um, I just Alabama already. I just think it's pretty clear cut. And I think beyond the X's and O's, which you can take your stats from Michigan and what they played, and that's the biggest difference for me, guys. And we've seen it play out in the past. I mean, especially even look at just Michigan itself, but Big Ten teams playing an SEC juggernaut or a team like Georgia, Alabama, like that. I mean, it works out almost the same way each time. I know Georgia, Ohio State last year was a different story. They had so many NFL guys on that offense. This is a Michigan team that has struggled on offense the last 4 games of their season. I know they get Harbaugh back, but can you really rely on McCarthy to do consistently enough to beat an Alabama team who is riding high, healthy, right? They're going to get their starting running back back. You add that with how Milroe is playing. I think he does what he wants, and I think that game against Georgia should tell you a lot. I know how you feel about that game, Artie.
Yeah, I mean, I'm higher on Michigan than you are. We don't have to belabor that point anymore. I think McCarthy. It is odd that McCarthy's stats have been what they have been since the whole story has broke. Like, if there's smoke, there's fire, right? But I do think that's a very good defense. I think they can run like I think regardless of what they may or may not know from the defensive calls, I think they can run the ball, right? It's just it's tough for me to bet against a Nick Saban any Nick Saban team that has multiple weeks or really a month to
Yes,
prepare. You know what
exactly.
I
And
mean?
and they show
And so,
adaptability, and that's one reason that they did to Georgia what they did, right? We all, I think most people have seen that clip of Nick talking about what they did defensively against Georgia after that first drive, right? He's not afraid to adapt, and he'll do it right away,
mhm.
right after the first stinking drive. Like think about that. You prepare for a week. You have some of the best defensive minds in college football in that room. Prepare for a week. Get a game plan, right? And then after that first drive, you change it. I mean, that's what you need. That's what you need as a coach. Because even if Michigan's not going to run 35 times in a row, guys, against Alabama,
No,
it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, and it won't work if they try it, right? So you can't come in here with a bully ball mindset against Alabama. You got to do something differently. Maybe Michigan shows up with a lot of versatility in what they're doing and their game plan. That would work well for them. And will it win them the game? I don't think so. But I mean, it's going to be a good game to watch and see those different storylines play out and see how these teams play each other. I think it'll show us a lot. Um, Texas, Washington. I would love, honestly, like storyline now that we don't have skins in the game. Love to see Washington come in and play well. They
same.
surprised me against Oregon. They surprised me against Oregon. I'll be the first one to
Yeah.
tell you I was loud wrong about that. Um, but man, is this going to be a tough challenge up front for both sides of that Washington offensive defensive line, right? I mean, Texas has the dudes up there, man, and they have a good front seven. They suffocate passers. Michael Penix is going to have to get the ball out quick, which I think he can do. He's experienced. I think he's what is his fifth year of college football, sixth year of college football, something like that. Um, so he's the guy you want to have back there, right? They have good receivers as well. Can you win over the top against Texas and create those plays and keep that Texas offense off the field? That's what I think the winning recipe for them would be. What are your first thoughts on this game?
I've been listening to a lot what Aaron's been saying. Aaron's really high on Texas. Um,
4.5 point
Aaron,
favorite.
yeah, Aaron knows ball. Obviously, I think that goes without saying. But I really I like the coaching staff at Washington. I really like. I think they got the North Dakota State blood in them, if I remember correctly, and I just think that they prepare their teams incredibly well for the opponent that they're playing that week. Now, I'm not comparing them to Nick Saban and his staff, but I do think that with a month to prepare, they have enough talent and offensive firepower on that offensive side of the ball to go shot for shot with Texas. I just think that like defensively
Mm-hmm.
and schematically, they'll be in a very strong position to potentially pull the upset, and it would be an upset in my opinion.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
but talent wise, honestly, Texas is probably the most talented team in the top four. Um, you could argue, right? It's probably you could argue it.
Yeah. If you go player for player, I know rating wise, as far as what they were rated as recruits, Alabama has that, but we know that doesn't mean, all that much, especially when these
Right,
guys to
right.
college, because you have your 5 stars that never see it down. But
So I don't know. I put it this way: I wouldn't be surprised if Washington. I would not be surprised if Washington put themselves in a position to win the game, ultimately win the game, right? But I do think I think Texas is very talented,
yeah.
and Washington will probably have to play not a perfect game, but a near perfect game to get that upset, in my opinion.
Yeah, they would have. I could see them going late, right, in this one, maybe shot for shot,
Oh, totally.
and then it comes down if you get into a game where you go shot for shot, comes down obviously to turnovers and defense at the end. Who turns the ball over
Mm-hmm.
less and whose defense makes the stop when they need to. And you got to take Texas defensively. So interesting to watch. I like Texas. I like Bama. We'll see that rematch. ESPN wants it. Committee wants it. No matter what the media tells you, that's what they want to see. Interesting a note I'll leave you with is over under for 40 is 44 and a half for Bama, Michigan. And it is almost 20 points more for Texas, Washington, 63 and a half. They expect some points. And it sounds like what they expect, Vegas at least, is that shot for shot kind of game. But we're watching all these bowl matchups this week. Of course, you cannot do it. Artie, it's been great, man. Thanks for playing hurt. Get some rest, big dog, and we'll talk soon. Georgia, Florida State, obviously Saturday, and we've shared our predictions. And they're going to score 10 points. Seminoles are going to score 10 points, and that's what we'll leave you. Go Dogs.
Kalen DeBoer, not North Dakota State. Sorry, from Sioux Falls. I knew there was a Dakota connection, but he was at Fresno State before Washington. But he's a legit coach now. He knows what he's doing. So appreciate it, JC. As always, looking forward to continuing this show in the off season and beyond. I appreciate the opportunity, as you know. Excited for some college football this weekend. In my opinion, this is the most fun weekend of the year because you get bowl season's a little bit nuts. It's like these college football players are all, or the college football teams are like they're running around their heads cut off at times, but it's fun. So hopefully we'll have a good weekend slate here.
Yes, sir. Thanks everyone watching or listening. Pulse Sports Network on YouTube. We appreciate subscription if you can, and a like as always. Throw some questions in the comments. We'll read them and we'll get to them when we can. Follow Arthur on Twitter at alynch1788. I'm at JC Shelton _ as well as if you want to check out my words, UGA Wire, USA Today Sports, and the Players Lounge. So we appreciate you watching. We'll see you real soon. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.